would seem that in a sense that we could think of me or me and this as a kind of alphabet soup, with all the little bitty letters that kids can play around with and try to put together into some kind of form and spell out something. Of course, some of you are probably the sort that you'd try to spell out things that if your parents came by and looked would be shocked. Which I might add, if you don't know it, is why Campbell for years did not put an F in their alphabet soup. Whereas I do not hesitate. Just so that we might ponder such words as filigree and Philistine. Seeing as how I only have interest in extraordinary, solid, dependable, worthwhile references, I'm going to pick up and refer back to some of what I was mentioning last time. One having to do, if you recall, that I mentioned that from a certain view you could look at whatever the reality of E is as being a kind of out of sync time, whereas to ordinary consciousness that whatever's going on always has at least two aspects, that there are always 2 feet to it, there are always 2 partners involved with this dance, this argument, this shoving contest, and that you could begin to try and look at E as being a factor in this, or an element in this that is out of time sync. It never seems to be of any contemporaneous importance, even if you tried and stretched your imagination from the 2 obvious elements and you tried to take the kind of verbal directions and hints I've given, that you tried to think of something that is not particularly relevant to this. Not only would it not seem relevant, it would strike you, if you take what I'm saying, it would also strike you as this has, if it had any possible relevance, it does not have it now. So what's going on is an immediate shoving contest over here between these 2 elements, between these 2 conflicting desires that I have and this other stuff. Maybe in some way, maybe I even get a suspicion that it could be indirectly relevant, in the same sense that the food chain, that everybody, that a worm in the ground is eventually relevant to whether I get fresh milk in my coffee. Maybe it does have some relevance, but it is not in sequence with time right now. That its even theoretical pertinence is not pertinent now, comma. That and another area that I know since last time has proven to be one of your all-time favorites, my mention of irrational contingencies or unconnected connections, unrelated connections. Since that was such a stirring success last time, let me even take unrelated connections and connect it, if possible, to E being a kind of out-of-sync time element. Now, if you recall, I brought up and said that there was a kind of method that I was giving a very brief description. I absolutely love this, by the way. Who did it?
Well,
again.
it's this month.
I love it. That there was a kind of method that you could pick out a kind of executory clause, a kind of contingency of something that may happen over here, and in some way use that to help you take some sort of action in an area that seems related. And I did point out to you that I didn't mean anything as crude or as complex as saying, well, I'll leave my wife if the Dow Jones goes up over 20 points. it should be on this basis that if you find some way, if you are even trying to look for some way to use this idea that I gave you of a kind of irrational, apparently unrelated contingencies to help you take some other action, it should be something that is the apparent irrational, unconnected, unrelated connection should indeed be something that is of personal significance to you. It's not unrelated to you like the Dow Jones average and assuming you didn't have any money in the stock market. But what I mean is that the other contingency over here, like you're saying, all right, if so-and-so happens over here, then I'll take positive action over here. The unrelated part is not that this contingency is unrelated to you and there's no consequence. It is that it is apparently unrelated to this over here. Now, don't choke yet. At least you're wondering, well, what significance is there even to that? Here's what I want you to try and consider. That what you're attempting to do, and there's several ways I can try and turn your head toward this, but one is that you are attempting, by apparently using some unrelated event or activity to help you determine some other process, that you are trying to pull in, apparently, out of sync E into your process. That even if you start this, or even if I describe it, if it still seems to be, even in my strange world, fairly tenuous to say the least, the connection that is, if you start doing it, that you have, let us say, a problem over here. I cannot decide what I should do. I just can't. And then there is something else going on in your life that seems to be unrelated, and you decide, more or less, that, all right, if such and such happens over here, then I will make such and such decision over here. You are willfully, irrationally dragging in what was E to this problem over here on my left, and you are dragging it in. You have taken what was previously unrelated activities, unrelated possibilities, irrational contingencies, unrelated connections over here to this little problem pointing to my right, and you have now, without any particular, in the 3D sense, rhyme, reason, or logic, you have now made this a part of this. And of course, some of you intellectual slow walkers, such as the kid, could, I guess, be asking yourself, well, now what? Now what? Life, kid, life. Now what is something new. It is, from another slightly altered view, attempting to do this, if you can find some way to use it. It also helps accustom you to trying to draw in and trying to draw on your own heretofore unused but ever-present e-resources. Take you back again to my problem on the left that you have. Here it is, and I cannot decide what to do. It seems as though there's too heavy a price to be paid no matter what my decision over here. It's just a two-pronged decision, as always, just a binary problem. I can either do this or do that, but I can't decide what to do. So, I'll do this if over here that happens. If that happens, then over here I'll do this. You're not only helping drag in what was to ordinary consciousness, previously unrelated E-information, E-activity, E-energy over here on the right, you begin now to be able, or it should help you become accustomed to, drawing in and drawing on, which is burning, which is using resources that you never had. Now the importance of this, if you're following this at all, is over here, time after time that all of you still experience this feeling that I am stuck in some sort of quandary, and it's not my size at all, and I cannot seem to get out of it, I can't decide what to do. If you'll also note Under those conditions, another description is I seem to be absolutely sans energy. Whatever energy I had going into this problem seems to have been completely depleted. I am just exhausted by this. It seems as though I'm trying to talk for ordinary consciousness. I go around and around. One day I decide, right, I'll do this. And then 2 hours later I think, no, I'll do that. Now I think, no, I can't decide. I can't stand this. And then I feel like I'm exhausted. Then I have to lay down and take myself a little nappy poo. It's as though I don't have the energy to even try and figure out what to do. There are always in everyone's life resources that you are not using. And right now I'm trying to get you to see the territory that is normally uncharted, unmapped. There's all of that seems to be unrelated, unconnected to the problem at hand. The energy is to draw in that which seems to be unrelated. Now this is getting close to fitting into ordinary definitions of mystical. That over here I've got a problem that's been wearing me out. In fact, I'm getting to the point I'm frightened. I am frightened personally over the possibilities. If I don't do something, I believe it will probably take care of itself. That is, that it will become an act done by itself, and then I'll be stuck with the consequences. But now that I think about it, either one of the consequences, I don't know why, but I dread either one of the two. I feel more tired than ever. I got to take not a nappy poo, I'm going to have to take a serious nap. I am exhausted. I can't decide what to do. If we were living on an ordinary map, of course, I might point out that the kind of feelings I'm describing is only about 2 or 3 millimeters on the map away from the great land of what? Depression, psychological exhaustion. And what's the one I never can remember, the new one I like, the phobia where you're afraid to go out of the house? But I just cannot stand it. There's nothing I can do. I am beat. I am exhausted just over the problem, just over thinking on the problem. If I just had the energy. The energy is available, and it's in the area that I am labeling for you, E. There are resources there that you never use. And in your own ways, as I point out, all of you ask me verbally or otherwise at least once. Or you ask me after making some initial comment that, boy, I am absolutely convinced this is where I belong, and I'm already getting the payoff for this. I see that this has headed me in the direction I always wanted to go. That's a given. You admit that to me finally, freely, and to yourself. Then you say, but, good grief, how can I keep up my energy level? Why is it that sometimes I am so enthused by this that I could walk on hot coals and do other strange and terrifying things, and then other days I cannot seem to hardly get out of bed? I'm giving you another answer. If you continue to try and operate your organism, if you try to run this machine that is you within the general nexus and scheme of life, and the only energy you have available is energy you've always had available, this is going to be a continuing, quote, problem. It is for everybody, not just you, it is for everybody. Your mother, your father, your boss, your employers, people down the street, and even, God forbid, people you don't know. But even worse, people you do know, such as yourself. But it does not change. Just because you think you're attracted to this, it doesn't automatically change that the gods and the spirits suddenly say, well, now this fellow has found a great spiritual guru of some kind. Now he's on the real track of paying homage to us. Let's give this kid a whole new dose of energy. No. In fact, if it's of any consequence, which I don't guess it is, but I keep falling back on horizontal props that some of you might like. I might point out to you that religious stories about religious people, are replete all over the world with little tales about the great religious leader. Not only is tempted by the fates and the bad gods, the anti-gods, somewhere in these stories there's always a time that it's like he got real tired. Got so tired that the stories point out that he might have blown the whole thing. He might have slept through the points when the gods were saying, hey, the gates are going to open one time for a few seconds, and you better be ready. That old story. it seems to be that energy is a problem. And just because you're involved with this does not give you an automatic escape from it. But I am telling you a way is to turn your attention away. I don't care that it appears to be a mundane, routine problem, or it appears to be a problem related to the metaphysical, transcendental aspects of this. You're going to feel tired. Everybody does. And that tiredness, in a sense, is not that much different from ordinary people going, good grief, is at 7:30 I can't get up and go to that cocksucking job again. That low level of energy is not that much different between you and ordinary lack of energy. You should know by now, hoping, praying, waiting for the piping hot tofu to fly in your mouth when you're hungry is not going to work. You have got to come up with energy some way. I might point out, look how common is the occurrence of you people being here with me and you people even on tape, as strange as that is, at other times and places, that I can apparently, at times, in some way it seems as though I have enthused you with energy. Metaphysical abilities, right? I guess you could call it a lot of things. How about this? I drag in a world of E. What do we talk about? Well, I say we, of course, me. What do I talk about? Well, I certainly don't talk about your everyday C and D life. I don't come in, this is not a church or a synagogue or a self-help group. We do not talk about all of our what? Problems. I do not talk about, well, things will be better by and when? By. So we're not talking, I am not limited to, dependent upon, or even playing in the key of C or D, right? I do not, whether you ever thought about this way or not. By and large, I skate around the verge of talking about God knows what, right? That is, I am continually skating around the key of E, which in my musical world, even though it does exist out in the ordinary world, C and D would be one thing, but the key of E almost doesn't exist. I drag in the irrelevant. I drag in that which would have been irrelevant to you. I drag in that which would be unrelated. At times I start out and it sounds as though I'm talking about something pretty straightforward. And at times I take notes, you people send me questions. I'll read a question. What do you think, or what do you have to say when someone's attracted to another person and the person is just absolutely not attracted to them? You know, the things that we do sometimes. Dear Dr. Specious, can you help me with so-and-so? That, all the way from that, to me, just apparently starting out to talk about something that seems to be of some significance. In case you never noticed, I am continually drawing upon the resources, if you understand the way I'm describing it now, that you would have considered to be in the area of E. And I do grab them, and you almost, kicking, screaming, choking, trying to put hammerlocks on it all, and to drag it some way into my monologue. And suddenly that, which just, by God, by every other definition, and from every other viewpoint, is irrelevant, has got nothing to do with what seemed to be the subject of this paragraph, and suddenly that son of a bitch is talking about it, and it's almost making sense. And I almost feel good. I feel enthused. You leave, and sometimes you think, now, what was it that was said? It almost made sense to me. Well, I don't know, but I feel better. You will not consider the possibility that I have dragged in fuel that you would have never, not only burnt, you would have never even brought it in near the stoker. You never even considered that this might be fuel. I'm going to tell you what, to the revolutionist, everything is fuel. Everything. And that's not just a quick thought up witticism of some kind. If all you've got to go by, if all you have to fuel yourself is that which is natural, then seriously you are skating on very tenuous possibilities insofar as this ever having a dramatic effect on you. You have got to have energy more than is genetically available, more than was genetically available when you were born. Because in a sense, it can be 3D stated that your genes were giving a dose, your system was given a dose of energy, and it's going to run out, and when it does, you die. And that your normal life is not going to have that kind of a ordinarily imagined effect, such as kind of things I've been through before and asking you, trying to get you to see it. But about such things as they say, well, all right, if you quit smoking, you're going to live longer. That does not take into consideration why is it some people are smoking and some aren't. If you are overweight, you're going to cut 3 years off your life for every 10 pounds you're overweight or whatever it is, and nobody can see that some people are overweight and some people aren't overweight. Or you remember the old man. Runs every day, and by God, he's 96 years old. And the ordinary thing is, he'd be dead. He wouldn't be 96 if he didn't get run every day. Forget 3D consciousness. People can't even see, under many conditions, 2D consciousness. That is, they cannot see that only 96-year-old men who are wired up to run are still alive, much less out alive running. Back to where I was, if you lost it. Under ordinary conditions, neither you nor anyone else, is going to change their lifespan. They're not. The only way you can have an effect on it, which is not the point of this ultimately, but the only way you can have any effect of apparently coming up with new energy is you have got to have new sources of fuel. You've got to have new resources to consume. You're operating now, you and everybody else at the ordinary level, you're operating at full blast. You're staying there before the furnace. You're chunking it in as fast as is necessary, as fast as is required. And you're grabbing that which is available. And as far as you're concerned, you and everybody else, you look around, and whatever it is that you're shoving in there, that's it. That's it. That's the way it's supposed to be. But the revolutionist looks around, and if it's running low, he turns around, he sees other people. He knows that people burn. He sees chairs. He sees opinions. He sees ideas. He sees his own problems. He understands that every fucking thing burns. Some kind of transcendental 4D understanding does not belie at the 3D level the laws of physics. Anything that is potential energy. Y'all studied that in college. If it's here, it's energy. It's just some form of energy. But ordinary consciousness turns around and it believes, well, only coal will burn, only wood will burn. I'm using that paradigmatically, of course. Only my life will burn. And my life is C or D. But the revolutionist looks around, and he's thrown in all the C and D that's available right now. I assure you, and some of you have been through this. You just didn't know what I did to you. You didn't know what happened. He'll turn around, and he'll grab whatever's there, and he'll burn it. You can be in somebody's furnace before you know what happened. But the point is, you've got to be able to do it to yourself. You've got to be able to do it to your life. That there is nothing that is irrelevant. Everything will burn. And if you're going to have new energy, you have got to burn more than you are burning now. You were operating at full blast when we met. You have got to burn the irrelevant. And one way to try and drag it in, as I was trying to show you the ultra-strange nexus, is this kind of irrational contingency. That I will take action over here, but it will be based upon something that happens over here that's unrelated. I might point out one other thing while I'm here. How about all the tales throughout history of men doing miraculous deeds? Could any of you see that this could be simply a reflection of someone who had this approach, who had the ability to do what I'm talking about? And from many outside ordinary views, what somebody just did was miraculous. That's what I like. I always like 100% surety, or 100% response. That is, nobody heard nothing. How about, at times past, if you recall, I've given you people here and people in other cities a task at given times that you've got to get out and get more people involved with this for it to continue. So I tell you that that is a task for everybody. You've got to go out. Sometimes I've given hints in the past, or I've given guidelines, and other times I've said, you people just go out and get a bunch of new people. And then along the ways, throughout the times that this has occurred, I have pointed out or asked you the rhetorical question, can you see the difficulty of ever coming up with anything new? That you keep wanting to do the same things over and over. And once recently, if you recall, I pointed out that if I said, hey, the job is to go out and make me personally, me by name, me, go out and simply make me famous. That if I said that, it would serve the same purpose, that it would still get the word spread regarding this. And I point out that nobody would have ever done that. Nobody would have ever thought that. It just seemed to be out of the question. I'm just bringing this up again since I've used this as an example to try and get you to look a certain way, to point out that it, under the basis that I intended to point out the example, whether you heard it or not, if I said forget about doing anything other than make me famous as quickly as possible, it would serve the same purpose, but look how I would have narrowed your attention, how I would have turned it to somewhere else. You had forgotten, you at least could abandon all ideas, all discussions, putting together committees about, well, how much should we tell people? Should we quote you exactly? Should we paraphrase you? Is some of what you said just for us? Would some of this be dangerous to throw out in the common marketplace? And or then your own awareness could say, well, fuck all that. Oh, that's beside the point presently. That the new aim, the new expressed aim, is this. But it could, and if it was done the way I was talking about, it would serve the same purpose, but you apparently would have new energy because you would have never done it that way. It would seem to be, if not totally irrelevant to you, it would seem to be very questionable. It would seem to be an off path. It would seem to be an oblique approach. It would seem to be not the most efficient, whereas I'm telling you, if you have already burnt up your energies in one particular approach over and over and over, then anything new is going to give new energy, even if it seems to be unrelated. Now back to what I was saying, that if you could see from a certain view somebody who knew how to use this, somebody who had the ability. I was suggesting throughout history things that have been attributed to mystics and swamis and religious people, that they say, well, the person apparently had great magical, supernatural abilities of the way they could deal with people. Could you see that what could pass for being a miracle would be somebody doing the totally unexpected, somebody doing something in relationship to somebody else, tell somebody to do such and such, and send people nearby heard it and went, good grief. And then they found out it worked. And they go, hallelujah, or whatever people said back then. Praise be to God. How did he do that? He told the person to go do so-and-so, and they did it, and they rushed back and said, it worked. I'm healed. I'm cured. I went to Omaha, whatever the desire was. My mother-in-law went to Omaha. And what you said, the passers-by, they all get, you can see them mumbling, and said, do you realize that that is surely some kind of supernatural man? Because did you hear what he told the guy to do? And they'll go, yeah. It's insanity. It had nothing to do with the problem he came there with. Obviously a miracle, right? There is something that you can get from that. There is something worthwhile. Next paragraph. After a sufficient time of a recruit or a would-be recruit absorbing new data, making proper fresh surveys of the terrain in relationship to the new data, the recruit has got to very quickly come to the realization that neither force, that is action alone, or planning, thinking of action alone, is sufficient to crank up the revolution. Neither one alone is sufficient. Whereas ordinary people back in the city, many would-be revolutionists, believe otherwise. All of the otherwise attempted revolutions out in life, not going by my name, of course, going under the guise of religions, under titles of mystical systems, philosophical approaches, etc., all attempted revolutions verbally, they all are based either on force, that is action, or thinking of action. You cannot crank up the revolution with you, with anybody, using only one of those. And the human organism is wired up to absolutely believe otherwise. It doesn't even seem to be open to any great argument. Ordinary consciousness would hear what I just said and it would not even feel stirred up enough to argue. It just feels like dismissing it. Like, well, that's incorrect. There could be times, perhaps, if you had a real magnanimous ordinary level of consciousness, it might say, well, there are surely times that action is called for, and then other times it's probably more appropriate to fall back on planning and perhaps wait till a more auspicious occasion. That's not it. The revolution cannot be cranked up, much less supported, by either one of those alone at any time. Alone, they are insufficient, and it seems otherwise. At times it seems otherwise, let me point out to you, when apparently I have relayed to you, revealed some new, fresh, truly new, instant information, and you want to write it down right quick, or you want to be sure and remember it real hard, and it seems that even just then, to infuse you with some new enthusiasm. Ooh, I know how that's related to something that's been happening to me. That it seems as though the information alone is enough to bring about some change. Now I ask you right quick, does it? If that's all you do, is sit there and write it down and blow me imaginary kisses about, oh, you just answered, oh, that's the very thing that's been bugging me, now you answered it. And in essence what you're saying is, you have solved my problem. Ask the kid there. Does that solve the problem? And at times, I have given some of you specific either task, or I gave you something specifically to do in response to something you asked me about, that you were having some problem, some difficulty with somebody, some aspect of life. And I would say, all right, go do so-and-so. If what you say is a situation, and you say you want it changed, or if you just want to find out if you want to get a fresh view of it, I'd say, all right, do so-and-so. And if those of you that I've done that to, you could recall to varying degrees, it was always irrational. It was always something unrelated to the problem. But then you did it, in some cases, and you felt as though, good grief. I mean, that was so simple. Surely, eventually, even I would have thought of it myself. But at any rate, God, I'm glad I asked you because it worked. It changed the situation. Now the situation has changed forever. Plus, I've learned something. If all you did was do the act because I told you, and that was it, it did not change it forever. And that was not the end of it. Action alone is insufficient. Thinking of action alone is insufficient. What you have got to have, I believe I can wrap this up in an agreeable manner. Listen closely, kid. What you need is a correct combination. What you need is a grand opening, going out of business, sale balance. That's what you need. Not too unrelated to this same paragraph, there's something else I want to note for you. That back in the city, it is ordinarily assumed amongst the population, it is ordinarily assumed, accepted, that the thinkers, the philosophers, even the intellectual institutions of the people are charged to reveal new truths. I ask you to consider this. Could it be that they are directed by the conspiracy, the secret authority, life, to in fact disguise it? Think about it. It's not an attack. I'm not making a statement yet. By the way, completely off the subject, do you realize that from a revolutionary viewpoint, nothing that happens in life is subject to attack? That it is impossible to directly attack anything as long as you're talking about it? That there is no such thing as a cogent verbal attack? Nay, if you could see it, it's worse. It is more shameful. It is funnier than the Marquis Don Quixote, because our miserrant knight, instead of just a broken stick for a lance, would be running about with a noodle in his hand. And I'm talking about a cooked noodle. Back to where we were. It would seem, not looking for any sort of secret nooks and crannies to this yet, but it would seem, just out in life, that philosophers, thinkers, I don't mean each one individually, instantly revealing the great truth, but it would seem as though the whole process, the civilizing evolution of man's intelligence, his insight, that all of the men who seem to go under the mantle of thinker, philosopher, social observer, not just out there, but in you, the whole process, the intellectual institutions of civilization, of the city itself, seem obviously charged with the ongoing process of revealing new truths. But then I ask you, could it be that they are actually being directed by life to disguise them? Whilst still appearing, I'm not questioning it appears to be that way, that they are apparently continually, scientists, everybody, apparently continually revealing new truths. What is actually going on, I'm asking you, can you conceive of the possibility? Three-dimensionally, of course, is impossible. But don't be too hasty in your little judgment. That they could be charged with disguising it, and what appears to be as a continual unfolding could be something else. Now, don't mistake what I'm hinting at to believe that I'm saying that C might be D. It's not that. But that the very sources, the very institutions, the very activities that would seem to be undoubtedly charged with the responsibility of a continuing, ongoing process of revealing the truth from another angle, could be charged with disguising it. Notice I keep saying that. I'm not saying hide it. It's not simply the opposite that I'm hinting or asking you about. Rather than revealing the truth, I'm not asking you, is it possible that they're hiding the truth? Remember, surely you're listening, aren't you? I didn't say hiding at all in this subparagraph. I said, what could you consider the possibility that they are being directed without knowing it, to disguise it. Not hide it. That's not the same thing. Disguise it. The kid said if that was true, that it made a lot of sense to him and explained a lot of stuff. That's what he said. And I guess that is possible, especially if you're a kid. You people on tape, I can't ever tell on camera, when I point around and ask the kid or refer to him, do I move too fast or he ever gets on tape? No. If you missed anything, when it's over, go in the bathroom and look in the mirror right over this shoulder and see if you don't see the kid. If there were any possible validity to this childish question I ask you, that is it possible that in fact all of the sources, remember we're not talking about people as who's, and it's not a 3D conspiracy, and it's not life or some combination of forces trying to hide the truth from people. I said, is it possible that they are charged with disguising it to what seems to be the continual ongoing process of unveiling more and more and revealing more and more truths, new truths, and expanding older truths, making the truths that are known more complex? So what if that is not the best revolutionary description? That perhaps life is directing and is causing this to move in such a way that they are charged with disguising it. If there was any validity to that, could you perceive, could you smell at all how life might be using such sleight of sight to keep its own mortal internal parts off balance and always moving? Which the kid just remembered could be referred to as synonymous with growing. What are you trying to say? Are you even trying to hint that which seems to be at the ordinary level, seems to be the continuing intellectual growth, the expansion of consciousness and awareness of man in general, of human life, may not be exactly what it appears? Not the opposite, not that it's a state of growing befuddlement, not that it's an increasing condition of being deluded, no. But that what appears to be a continuing process of new truth revelation is actually a process of disguising it. Well, I could point this out, and I don't see any stopping me now, that real, fresh data is not forthcoming from the city anyhow. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you that much. And as you see fit to apply or not apply what I just said to the rhetorical question about the apparent sources and outlets of intellectual development, perhaps unknowingly being charged with disguising new truth rather than revealing it. Whether you see any connection between that and what I just said, but since I've said it, I will admit, I'm telling you, there is no fresh revolutionary data ever forthcoming from the city. And so you might then, in your leisure time, consider where new data might come from, where it normally appears to come from, in light of my inquiry. And in possible conjunction to my statement as to the absolutely lack of fresh data coming from the Big C. Just think if there was actually fresh data, real useful info, revolutionary info, available in the city, we wouldn't have to be putting up with all this crap. We would all still be Jews and Baptists and Episcopalians, and we'd still be living at home with your mother. You and all your family now, they'd be living with you. You'd still be eating sausage for breakfast. You'd be laying on the couch. You'd be burping and making other rude noises, and all of your hair would be out. The hairs that no longer grow in your head would be growing out of your nose and your ears, and your joints would be creaking, especially the ones up in here. There would be no question about lack of energy. It'd only be the matter of, phew. Once I got over the initial shock, boy, I sure am glad now that I'm pushing 50, because I don't give a damn for nothing, and I wouldn't get up and move over if Jesus walked in the door. I wouldn't roll over in bed if Sophia Loren could drop 30 years off her age and jumped in bed nude. Just think, we'd all be in the city. We'd all be home right now, and you people in other places, instead of watching me on tape, you could be watching The Cosby Show, Miami Vice, the National Geographic Plumber. A few other matters. When I mentioned several weeks ago that I would bring your attention slightly to the left or the right. Back in the city, the military have a trick, a method, known method to use on prisoners, which I might point out ultimately is everybody. In case you need any more encouragement to stay out of the fucking city. But the military have a method that approaches supremo. That is to make prisoners feel so worthless. All kinds of quite ordinarily known means. Stripping them naked, not giving them any privacy. In fact, you've seen enough movies if you've never thought about it. They're fair reflections. That what they would describe in the 3D world is just try and tear down one's self-image, a feeling of one's individual worth as a human being. Refuse to call them by name, call them by number. Talk to them in the third person. Make them stand out in front of large groups of random people naked. Is to make them feel so worthless as to begin to doubt their very own existence. This in the 3D world is the fastest, most efficient way, and it is the closest that they would get in the 3D world to that area dreaded and feared back in the 50s, especially as total brainwashing. It's not just to make someone who was previously anti-communist, speaking politically, to believe that they're now a fervent communist. Real brainwashing is to make one begin to doubt one's very own existence. Now, that's brainwashing. If you can do that, then you can tell somebody, you don't have to say, well, now you're a communist. You can tell them, hell, now you're a flagpole. Now you are a bad odor. There's no problem. You have got it. That is almost the ultimate method. There is one slight intermediate method we could mention, and that is to stop for a second and turn the tape over. I suspect that some of you may believe that I am now talking about maybe internal conditions rather than secret police and stormtroopers torturing poor civilians. Nah. All right, maybe. So maybe there could be some possible internal personal significance, some potential. You recall that several meetings back, I even pointed out that if we were actually talking about the internal state of Fred or Mary, that there was a parallel method that one might use in the apparent struggle with oneself, whatever may be the basis of this, vis-a-vis externally, how you could seriously encumber a potential foe if you began to, every time when you saw him, went, "Aren't you losing a lot of weight? Are you wearing purple eye makeup? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I see you over at the hospital?" To begin to make the potential foe, the governmental adversary, begin to seriously question their health, and if you can really do it good, even get them to believe that they are terminally ill. From the apparent wonderful Disney World out here to the one inside, I was pointing out a certain, or at least hinting to you, a way that you might use this toward your own apparent internal foes, right? Everyone remembers that. Some of you, I know, has been the highlight of your career, being able to hear that some weeks back. So how about this? That I'm trying to show you even an improved. That should be my charge, to continually update and to give you the new, improved method and version of it, at least a sidestep improved version of this, that you could treat, if you knew how, your apparent establishment adversaries in you, in your state. What if you could treat them, as I'm described you and noted you, that the military might treat their prisoners, that you could make your apparent establishment foes feel so unworthy that they begin to doubt their own existence even. That I'm almost a non-person now. Nah, that ain't the way to do it, is it? No, the kid said it's not. Self-improvement, it's got to be hands-on. You got the fucking Socratic know yourself. Got to face up to your flaws, and if you won't, get in an encounter group and have some strangers who will gladly do it, point them out for you. And if that won't work, call your mother. But in the binary world, it seems as though if you're going to improve self, if you're going to overcome shortfalls, personality flaws, and etc., it has got to be some kind of, hopefully, direct confrontation and attack. Look how hard it is to change. How hard it is that, ooh, I'm overweight, and as far as I know, I put on weight for one reason: I've been eating more this year than I did last year. So, if that be true, there is an obvious, even a dunderhead like me, there would seem to be an obvious solution to this. This year, I will eat less. That's exactly it. I'll eat less, and if eating more made me put on weight, I'll eat less and I'll lose weight. What could be simpler? And I assume that some of you would say that a lot of things, such as saying a man to the moon, might be simpler than you eating less. And yet, by all appearances, it seems to be simplicity itself. I think I would like to stop smoking. Well, let's see, how would I go about it? I know, I won't smoke anymore. Well, no. Let's be realistic. That is not the way things apparently get done out there, right? What if, instead of confronting the problem, what if you could learn? I told you this wasn't related to anything else, but I guess It might be related to some of the stuff I was talking about earlier on the other side of the tape this evening. What if, instead of directly attacking the problem, what if you could learn how to in some way do something? Take action, even plan to take action, both, in ways that seem to be absolutely unrelated. That you attempted to send a man to the moon, and you started by putting the would-be astronauts into this little rocket and turn it upside down and drive it into the ground. If that's too... if that example is too antipodal, how about trying to send them to the moon, and the first thing you do is, all right, let's make sure we got all the systems locked on to Jupiter. What if what appears to be your foe, your habits, something you won't change, instead of trying to wrestle it, instead of trying to overcome it in hand-to-hand combat, even mental hand-to-hand combat? Of course, it's kind of silly for me to bring this up based upon the great success that everyone has on this basis. I know I'm sort of wasting my time, but what if instead of doing that, you could take this apparent, even mental hand-to-hand combat? Of course, it's kind of silly for me to bring this up based upon the great success that everyone has on this basis. I know I'm sort of wasting my time, but what if instead of doing that, you could take this apparent foe, this flaw, this internal adversary, this bad habit, this weakness, and what if you could just treat it? What if you could strip it and in nonverbal ways make it stand out there nude in front of all the people, and some kind of even nonverbal sign with arrows and smiling faces, maybe pointing at its little private parts, pointing at its little brain parts? What if you could make it feel so unworthy? Nah, I guess even I went too far. I don't know where else you could go with that kind of thinking, except maybe insane. Remember this. In fact, you've got to remember this, even if you're not in a nightclub in North Africa, and even if I don't have the piano here to play the song in the background, but you've got to remember this. If you can observe anything in life, anything that works, that is, that you see something that by all appearances, no debate, is just obviously this kind of situation out in life has that kind of effect. That same motherfucker can be used in here, but it seems to be absolutely unrelated most of the time. And if you could convince somebody, for whatever reason, that it had some theoretical connection, it's not in sync time-wise, because in here is a pressing what? Matter. And what you're trying to tell me is some kind of cockamamie possibility that something out here I might could use just because people treat each other in a certain manner and it seems to have that strange effect. And you're telling me that if I tried to treat my own self as though I was this group treating that group, and I don't have time for this. I'm coming apart in here, and you're trying to tell me, look at the way that the military treats prisoners. And you're trying to tell me in some way, and I know you're trying to speak in some kind of down-home parallels or parables, you're trying to tell me that there's some way that you could use this in here. Give me a break. I need help now. And this is something to go think about. This is some kind of fairy tale theory. Well, everybody, of course, can remember that and laugh at it all as you can continue to flow through life in your limousine of success, constantly identifying, well, I believe I'll change this. I want to lose weight, and what I'll do, it's obvious. I've got it now. I can hear the message. I'll eat less. I think I'd like to stop smoking. I'll do that by stopping. I think that I would like to get more exercise. Let's see, how will I go about that? I'll exercise more. Again, it's the wonderful 3D logic that I love that life has imposed upon those who live confidently in the city. That is, the straightforward approach is not only the best approach, it's the only approach. Well, it's the only reasonable approach, right? I want to change something, I want to lose weight. Well, hey, we're talking about now a serious problem. We're talking about things I need books, I need to go to a doctor, I need to have checkups, I need to have a couple of videotapes. Well, plus first I got to buy a video machine because I don't have one to play the tapes on. And, of course, I got to have a wardrobe, the right wardrobe. And let's see, and I've got to rearrange my schedule. Plus, always plus, I really need to mull this over a bit. Such as, well, let's see, what year is this? There is a kind of, these are 3D words, and they're simply an imperfect reflection of something else. But it is this kind of oblique approach, right angles, dragging in the irrelevant, burning resources that apparently have no connection to what's going on. Instead of directly attacking the problem, instead of you being a continuing participant in the struggle, the shoving match, the wrestling, the fighting, the hand-to-hand combat, or at least the confrontations of nose to nose between C and D and you. What if you could take what apparently is the opposition and to make them feel so worthless that they doubt their very own existence? The Koreans can do it to the Americans can do it to Koreans, the Albanians can do it to the Serbs can do it to God knows who. But you mean in some way you could do it to yourself? Kid, you keep imagining I'm saying things that I'm not. Next paragraph, allowing, of course, for life's own natural little faux pas and faux starts. I can't think what the French word for start is, but allowing for life's own little natural false steps. Natural, expect the little temporary false steps that life takes and the natural little false starts that life makes. Allowing for all of that. The real revolutionist knows that all change is good. The tricky part that many people have tried to bring up to me, they wanted to bring up to me, the tricky part, it would seem, all change is good, and this in spite of the fact that undeniably, undoubtedly, unquestionably, mortal eyes look upon life and sees human activity that is surely morbific, disgusting, regressive. Without any doubt, history is replete with it. This morning's newspapers. "3D sight. Sees a dying old order and it's dying to give way to the new. But to have a distinct personal awareness of this, at the very least, would require what I've been describing to you as 3D time consciousness. Because ordinary consciousness, without any doubt, this is no debate. If you are limited to 3D consciousness, you don't even have to bother to try and, some of you, if there were newer people seeing this tape or hearing this for the first time, to try and imaginarily pierce some inhumane armor, some delusion I may have by saying, listen, let me tell you one or two horrible things that happened in history. One or two. I didn't know I was dealing with people with actual second grade diplomas. History is full of it. Anywhere you look, from a 3D level, I'm not debating that. Mortal lies, ordinary consciousness. You don't have to be a priest or a rabbi or a member of the Humanist Guild to say, in many ways, life, man, history, human existence is inhumane. It's despicable. It's unbelievable. The terror that flows through human activity, springs from human tongue, seems to be at the root of human planning and motivation. That is not in doubt at the 3D level. But the real revolutionist, if you just had 3D time consciousness, you would see that it's not an excuse, it's not a rationale. It is the fact that at this level, it's almost as though a whole other universe continues to flow through this one, and you only see at the very most 2/3 of it. They're what is appearing to be undoubtedly despicable, inhumane, terrifying, is normal death, decay, which is always giving rise, always fertilizing a brand new birth of some kind. Death to ordinary consciousness, your mothers, your fathers, your dog, large groups of people, catastrophes, wars, assuming that you're just ordinarily humane in the city sense of the word. All of that is fearful. All of that appears to be unjust. How can a man or a woman work and be so good and on the verge of doing great things and be struck down? How can a child, just a few years old, be killed? How can a young person just barely beginning to fulfill their promise in school and their plan for the future be struck down? How can this be? I'm telling you again, it's not because I say so, but I'm telling you that the revolutionist sees all change, all change, all change is good. It cannot be debated, it can't be described, and he sure as hell does not go out telling the public. Because left at the 3D level, it is not true to say that the air disaster that happened in Burma yesterday, killing 43 people, is good. It is not that. It is not to say 3D-wise that, oh, I am delighted. I was afraid that we would not have an air disaster this week. Taking into consideration, allowing for life's own natural missteps, false starts here and there. Allowing for that, all change is good, or it would not have happened. Your only other possibility, which I'm just throwing this in to fill up time, is that life is involuting. And if the people are correct and I'm wrong, that is all the people and all your people, that is everything is going to hell. Of course, if that's true, then it's not just, as the kid would say, it's not just that explains a lot, that explains everything. So you always got that possibility to fall back on, if indeed you can still fall back. That simply the bad guys have won. This whole thing was cranked up, wound up at one time, and now it's running down faster and faster, and everything that happens is further proof that it's falling apart, and everything that happens is helping to tear it all down. That this whole thing is dying, and very quickly. Now, if that's true, that is a load off everybody's mind, because there is nothing to figure out. There is no doubt, there are no questions. You can not only close down the seminaries, you can close down the bars. It all now makes not a lot of sense. It makes sense. That's it. But between here and there, it is only the revolutionists that can see that all change is good. All change is creative. At least I'll leave this paragraph, and you do believe that I was only making historical external references. How about all change in your state, in your world, in your universe? That's getting too hard, isn't it? Huh? I mean, it's one thing. I can almost stretch my little brain, said the kid. In some way, imagine, all right, I can see that great wars can almost have some kind of, I guess, cleansing effect and renew a people or some part of the planet, and it seems that the people spring back even better and healthier than ever. But inside, the kid said, give them a break. You mean the catastrophes in me, the terrible things, which I don't have time to go into, of course, but the terrible, terrible things that have happened in me. That you don't know the number of air disasters, the number of near misses that happens every day. And that's all good? Not theoretically. Good's just a damn word, and a pretty piss-poor one at that. But that it is all good? Anything that changes? You mean stuff that changes have happened to me that I didn't want. Now, I didn't say profitable changes. I didn't say uphill changes. I didn't say sunshine changes, daffodil changes. Changes. All change is good. Well, somewhere in the forest of Burma, maybe you can tell those people that. But wait a minute. You don't know all the stuff that's happened to me, said the kid. All of that was good if you got a revolutionary view and you know how to use it. It was all good. Of course, looked at one final way for this paragraph. What choice do you have anyway? Another thing, I mentioned this in passing once or twice in the last few meetings. As difficult as it is, I understand completely, because I'm the one that conjured up these particular maps that I keep shifting on you. But the idea of me putting names on three forces, pointing out to you that absolutely, as could be best clinically, verbally described, the very foundations of everything right here, of me standing here, of us talking, of you hearing, of there being apparent human development, human evolution, de-evolution, regression, inhumane activities, charitable activities. All of this always has, at the very least, this unseen triaxial base, and me calling it C, D, and E, among other things. Ordinary consciousness, 3D consciousness, cannot see it. You've always got to have consciousness, using my numerical description, 1 degree more complex than what you're looking at. You simply got to, or you can't see it. But since I mentioned this, I do want to point out that some of you might find this of some help. Although I've warned you all along the way, there's no such thing as C, there's no such thing as D, there's all ad hoc. Everything is ad hoc. The brains of your own little kid could at times think, well, wait, that is some kind of verbal cop-out, or you keep saying that this is so complex, this is self-contradictory verbally. You could cover up all kinds of stuff by saying that, and then you could just babble, assuming I could babble, and say any damn thing. And then I would think, well, it must be my fault for not understanding, because he warned us beforehand that this is going to sound, to say the least, this is going to sound verbally illogical. By God, he hit it on the head. But it must be my fault, because he warned us beforehand. There is another parallel that I just mentioned, another way that you could look at this. And that is, there are updates, there are descriptions such as a nor'wester, an eastern wind, that there seems to be updates and directional names given to the wind of importance. Which way is the hurricane right now that's in the Gulf moving toward the western coast of Florida? Which way is the wind blowing? If I'm going up sailing a kite, if I'm going up sailing myself, if I'm going up flying, if I'm out sailing a boat, it's of some importance. It could be of death-defying importance. Am I going to be dealing with an east wind, a west wind? And there is only one wind. There is no such thing as an east wind. There is the wind blowing from what we call the east. There's no such thing as a nor'wester wind. There's the wind, and it could be coming at you from the northwest quadrant, as we have made it up and called it. But the wind is simply the wind. You cannot grab a bottle and run out and get some wind and take it in and say, well, this was an east wind. What was blowing from the east 5 minutes ago and is now shifted and blowing from the west, you are following this, is the same wind. The direction change. There is no such thing as C force, D force, E force. There is force. There is no C, D, or E energy. There is energy. And it comes from different directions, serving at any particular time apparently different purposes from your apparent view. That I am sitting here in a boat, I've got the windsock up, and I see this is an easterly. This same wind, you understand. All you got to do is change your position on this orb, and that, quote, same wind could be registering to your consciousness, even your windsock of consciousness, is coming from the west. And are you going to fire shots heard at least halfway around the world? Shouts at this other guy who says the wind's coming from the east, and you holler, you fool, it's coming from the west. It's the same wind. According to where you are standing, where your consciousness is, it can be labeled this wind or that wind. The wind is just the wind. You know, compared to, as opposed to good, solid, ordinary information, you know, this kind of revolutionary data, I might point out, is, now I think about it, is kind of somewhat wistful itself, is it not? And where else can you get this kind of wistful data? It would seem that one of the definitions of real data, real information, is that, you know, it's solid, it's real. But hell, you can get that in the city. It's everywhere. They're selling it on street corners, the back of cereal boxes. But I pointed out to you, there is no fresh data forthcoming from the city. And you get out in the bushes, get away from the city, and whereas you initially were expecting real, solid, dynamic, stable, good, secret maybe, occult information. And it turns out that you almost get little textbooks. And are they filled with words and sentences? Are they even filled with papers and pages? They seem to be filled with, oh, I don't know, wistfulness. God knows why I'm hung up on the word wistful. I've never even said wistful in my life, I don't think, but it just, I don't know. As opposed to good old-fashioned, real solid knowledge, I don't know, that just suddenly the word wistful came to me. Beyond all these months, if not years and days and hours, of shifting maps and talking in different ways and coming up with pictures and presenting information that perhaps has proven to be new to you. and as complex as it seems at times, as complex as I may apparently have tried to make it, and at times apparently as crude and as vulgar as I've tried to make it, those of you who have been here sufficiently, if not in time, in essence, in reality, that you begin to have some sensation of what I mean by the bushes and the city and revolutionary attempts, to those of you, could I sing this song, this possibility? After all this time, we could have never started here, and I'm not saying that there's any way that this could be immediately sprung upon an unsuspecting public, but those of you who now understand something out of the ordinary, and that there has been some, at least small alteration in the dance stance of your own DNA, could you hear me say that from one view, I could now present and state that the ultimate approach, the answer to it all, is the look method. That's it. It's damn it, look. That's it. All of the mystical questions, hell, all the everyday questions, the stuff that no one can seem to understand psychologically. Why do people act like this? Why do I keep doing that? Or why is it that I went in that situation, I thought so-and-so was happening, and I left, and 5 minutes later, I feel like somebody has greased me up real good and thrown me into a revolving door, and Jesus, it's going to take me perhaps the rest of my life trying to analyze what happened. The method, the look method. Those of you that now understand enough, you know this. In the city, nobody looks. And you should know by now a little bit what I mean. All you got to do is go back to the city. It's almost impossible not to fall back into it. Nobody looks in the city. At the ordinary hardwired level of human consciousness, people do not look. They don't. I could, not incorrectly, redescribe all of humanity's historical, mystical states as being moments where a person looked. That's it. They didn't know it, but they were suddenly a participant in my look method. Oh, I know, I've read some of that crap that they describe it as, I began to feel as though my consciousness were spreading against the very fabric of the universal resistance to human development. I felt as though the gods took me in their little arms and says, there, Hubert. Or I felt as though staying up for 4 days and pushing against a brick wall with my nose began to pay off in heretofore unsuspected metaphysical ways, so that my very soul, the little spark of my soul, began to unfold like the blossoms on a hog. I'm telling you, they can use all that verbiage, which they've done, but I'm telling you what happened. You know what happened? They were suddenly using the look method. Areas that may seem to be a little less, historically speaking, a little less transcendental, if not metaphysical. How about the moments that people, apparently otherwise non-spiritually, non-weird inclined people, thinkers, philosophers, scientists, social observers, you, your uncle, your second cousin, that seemed to once in their life had some great flash of insight, heavy-duty insight, real in-depth insight. They might have written a book on that one insight. It might be now on the epitaph on their gravestone. It may have carried them through life. They may have made a living over that one insight that the medium is the message. We're all on the spaceship Earth. Know thyself. God is love. A penny saved The look method is it. All of this could be described, at least up until this point, if I wanted to do it, as simply this, the look method. You want mystical experiences, you want to expand your consciousness, you want to understand that which no one else understands. Then what you should do is pursue the look method. Wherever you are, what's going on, no matter what it is, no matter how you feel, no matter what's being said, no matter what you believe is being done to you, is look. That is the secret method. At all places, at all times. You don't need any background. Of course, it's a lie. And if you hear this, it took all the background that you and I could muster up to this point for you to hear any of this about the look method. Forget about expanded states of consciousness. Forget about having to work yourself up into great moments of internal spiritual fury, of torturing yourself into the point that you're an open vessel for the cosmic forces to flow in through. The kid said, phooey on that. All you do is use the look method. Don't ask me anything else. Don't say, what should I do if this occurs again? The next time I'm around these particular people and they do so-and-so, I'm telling you now, use the look method. Yes, but what if I'm back and every time so-and-so says such and such to me, I don't know, I go into a fit. What can I do to stop that person from doing that? How can I manipulate them? How can I work them? How can I make them use the look method? That's all you got to do. Just look. Of course, you have got to be the place that I wouldn't have to give you any intro or entree into this by saying that you don't ordinarily look. You've got to understand that. Not in theory, not in some kind of philosophical speculation that people are in a low level of consciousness and through some extreme methods and metaphysical activities and fasting and overeating and playing basketball, that they can make themselves more acute, and that they can, by practicing Oriental stuff, whatever it is, and they can do this, and I can kung fu my consciousness up to an extreme anticipatory state. You can call it all that. I understand all that. We're not laughing at that. But all of that, Jesus, that's like all the effort it takes to pack and to check the schedules and make sure you're getting the best prices to get on a flight. And you don't worry about being stranded there at the airport and it's stacked up. Hell, all you need is a brown bag and call Trailways. It's the direct, it's the simple method. No waiting. You're in touch with the environment. You don't have to call about schedules or anything. They don't keep any. It doesn't matter. They're not going to stack you up over Cleveland. They're not going to have to shuffle you and tell you, no, the bus can't land at Dulles. We're going to have to take you on to New York. It's the direct method. It's like the Trailways mystical method is the look method. Whatever it is that you want to know, no matter how metaphysical it sounds or seems to you, or how crude and everyday it sounds and seems to you, that the answers have either got to come from some metaphysical, cosmic place, or else the answers have got to be probably hidden in my subconscious. The answer to it all if you know how to do it, that's it. We can talk forever. I can give you new tricks. And evidently, I can come up with these. Who knows how long I can continue doing this? But it's the look method, is you don't stare. You don't do like everybody else in the city. They're walking around face to face, not just with each other. Some of you really enjoyed that when I brought it out. But you didn't take it far enough. You live fucking face to face with yourself. So you never look. It is the ultimate approach. It's the answer to it all, is the look method. If you know how to do it, that is all you've got to do. Anything you don't understand is look. Because if you know how to look, and you do look, you'll understand it. The built-in justice, as always, is very few people can do this, and so it's not a matter that just every Tom, Dick, and Hubert out on the street back in the city could hear this and go, hey, I'll start looking, and they look, and sure enough, they begin to understand what's going on. You know by now that's not the way it works. I need about 15 minutes at the end. The look method takes a person that knows about it, a person that can do it. The kid just pointed out to me that, believe it or not, we have run out of time. So we'll have to conclude, but I assume you'll take the appropriate action. That is, those of you viewers out there that are part of a Nielsen household. Be sure you check off the right box, because I repeat, so that there's no mistake for some of you people in the Midwest who've been watching this, this is not, I repeat, this is not some strange form of Sesame Street. The kid said, bye.
And Kyroots said, give me an N, give me an E, give me a big V-E, and an R, yeah, nevers. And coming on the field now, yes, I do believe it is. Could it be? Yes, I was right, it is. UFNs, unidentified flying nevers.
Never, no matter how folksy and musical it may sound, be so lonesome you could cry.
Never try and force sushi on a man who is normally accustomed to dealing with a high-speed drill press.
Never expect the voters to take you for an honest man if you continually point to and refer to your own head as the old teapot dome.
Never appear to be too committed to anything.
Never call your own number when you know that no one's home.
Never accuse a literary agent of just being in it for the moolah.
Never, even as a hearty fraternity prank, should you release wet ferrets into an operating room.
Never be so uncouth whilst the visitor to the subcontinent mention it as the true homeland of the bagpipes. Forget it, if not forgive.
Never look down that lonesome road when you're just dying to get the blues. I read that wrong. Never look down that lonesome road unless you're just dying to get the blues.
Never attend Mardi Gras with a manic depressive.
Never ask a Greek if he's a back hole digger, or even if he owns one.
Never, no matter how tempting, should you name your children after a major household appliance.
Never row out further than you can swim unless you have inflatable ankles.
Never fail to play down your bad points and shortcomings if you're the sort of who has any.
Never say genre when you can just as easily say sort or kind or type.
Never get all concerned over death in the afternoon if you're already scheduled for an unbelievable torture in the morning.
Never wait until something's actually happened to comment on it.
Never, even in a tight, should you attempt to use your stereo turntable as a food processor.
Never try and put lightning in a mason jar. Make that lightning bug.
Never stretch any of your opinions to fit any size reality.
Never confuse facts with fantasy unless you're simply talking for someone else's benefit.
Never, even in a harmless jest, stroll up to an automated bank teller machine and announce, "Hi, my name is Dillinger. What's yours?"
Never strain yourself attempting to look homeward. And I don't care whether you're a damn angel or not.